Let's get straight into. Hey guys, what's up? How y'all doing today? I don't know why did I do that. Anyway, today I decided to do another visual podcast episode. So this one will be about generational toxic traits, specifically body weight and image. So fun fact, I actually did an episode already that hasn't been released. I'm trying to put it in words as like I pre-recorded some episodes already, and I just thought maybe this one could be redone as a visual episode because I feel like this topic is more personal to me and it's like more of a personal topic. So I feel like topics like these should be like me talking to you one on one or like having conversation with you, just, it's like a personal thing. But like podcasts, I mean, are personal too, and it's listening to your voice. That's why I'm doing both. If you don't even have time to even look at something, you can just listen to me while you're driving. I don't know if you want to listen to me while I'm driving, don't. Um, Anyways, so yeah, topic will be generational toxic traits, specifically body weight and image. It's gonna be a series, I believe, because there's a lot of things that are considered generational toxic traits depending on how, like, it's more of like a general things or common things amongst like families of color specifically. So, and there's a lot of things I want to talk about, but for today it will just be body weight and image. So without further ado, let's get started with this topic. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. I have like a camera recording me, so I'm just still trying to get the hang of this visual thing. But yeah, let's get started. So, when it comes to talking about body weight and body image as like a generational toxic trait, the first thing that comes to my head is basically commentary type of things. Like, I've seen like YouTube videos talking about this situation or topic, or like TikToks where it's always, because they even say that the person that criticizes their family members because of their weight, they're usually not the standard either. I'm trying to think of it as like it's like a self-conscious thing. When someone talks about you and criticizes you, it's mostly because they're not happy with themselves and it has nothing to do with you. It's basically them seeing themselves in a way, or like not loving themselves in a way to where they want to push this next person off the edge because they're not feeling good about themselves. Does that make any sense to y'all? Because now that I think about it, it's like, especially with old generation family members versus younger generation family members, older generations want the younger generations to live off by their name and for them to represent their families in a good light, like how they raised them, and then they represent them when they're older. And it's like they push these narratives like you have to go to college, be successful, get a degree, get a job to make us look good, or like you have to have a certain body image or just an image in general, the perfect image that they want to push on their children to make it look like they made it, or like, yeah, I did this. Like, it's like a being a product of the family. That sounds so horrible to say, but that's basically what it feels like to many children or like younger generations. It's like you keep pushing on this false narratives, these false idolizations that even people who I guess have these characteristics can't even live up to. So, where I'm going with this is that the reason why body weight and image issues is a generational toxic trait because no one has, not no one, but it hasn't been nipped in the bud as it should have. Because it's always wanting, so especially within families of color, let's say this, you know, there has been histories of trying to match within the European standards of beauty, which is someone who is slimmer and has bone straight hair, has light skin, all these things. And when it comes to racism back then, it was always, you know, people being assimilated to that type of culture. And then seeing someone with the opposite of those traits, they would like make fun of them, say they're ugly and all these things. But it's like, not everyone should look like this, or not everyone looks like this. And the older generation was always like pushed very hard to just not say anything, not to talk back, and to just take whatever they're given. So then they expect the same energy towards the next generation. But with this generation, with my generation and the generation before mine, I would say we're more outspoken about our issues. Like now, let's say an older family member is talking shit about your weight or something. We're more likely to speak up or to cut that family member off, or just hold them accountable versus just ignoring it. But back then it was more of like, they doing this because they care about you and they want to see you thrive. But do they really care about you, or is it just something wrong with them and they're just pushing their insecurities onto their children? You know what I'm saying? It's very messed up. It's something I've dealt with in my personal life, and I know a lot of other people deal with that. It's always, even if it's not meant to be intentionally hurtful, it's still hurtful when you talk about someone's weight when they didn't even need any advice. Like, you're not my doctor, you're not my nutritionist, you know, not even my mom, and you're over here talking about someone's weight. You'll have no idea what's going on in their head. A lot of people, like a lot of commentators I listen to, when they talk about this, they always say also, like, just because someone has lost weight doesn't mean that, that they're doing okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't mean that they're doing better. Maybe they are working out and trying to be healthier, but you don't know if they're like sick. You don't know if they're stressed out, because when it comes to being like stressed or depressed, your weight can fluctuate depending on the person. Like, maybe you gain more weight, or you could have. It just depends, on the person. Let me restart that part. When someone's stressed out, maybe they'll gain more weight or they'll lose more weight. It just depends. You just don't know what's going on with that person if their weight's fluctuating. And trust me, they'll know that their weight has been fluctuating. People know their bodies. You don't just have to say, oh, wow, you lost a lot of weight. You're doing so great. It's like, maybe, probably shouldn't say that. Maybe, like, the most common thing from a commentator that I've listened to was to just never ask and just mind your business. That's all you have to do. It's really rude to just ask them or to compliment them or to criticize them either way. Because either way, people know their bodies and they know they're gaining weight or they know they're losing weight. Just don't even, you're going to be a part of the problem. I'll just end that part. But, yeah, so it's a generational toxic trait because, see, back then, the older generations weren't able to express themselves freely how we're able to now. So now it's like we're teaching the older generation to be more conscious, if that's a good word, like conscious of the world around them. Because I definitely am with my generation. I would say just my family in general, they're conscious as well. Surprisingly, I feel like it would be surprising to other people who are in their generation, if that makes sense. I feel like my family is way more open to talking, and we don't just sweep things under the rug, and we don't just criticize each other and just leave it at that. We're mostly more communicative, and we try to emphasize what we're actually saying to each other instead of just saying, do this, do that. It's usually an actual reason. But I did say it happened in my personal life more solely from not really people in my family, but more outsiders, like people in my school or like medical professionals, I would say. I can't think of more top of my head. Like doctors. It was more outside. I had a little bit inside too in my family life, but it was also more outside life too that had a lot to do with it. But and then I also saw it from happening to my other family members as well. Whenever we visit older people, not older people, but older generations, it's always been that's all. It's all you talk about. Every time you don't really see someone for a while, it's always, "Oh my God, you look so big now. What have you been eating? Oh my God," like a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about. A lot of y'all have experienced this. It's always a family thing. It's always, you go to a family cookout, you haven't seen grandma in 10 years. I don't know, things like that. It's always like that. I think people, like, you know, families that gather a lot, people with bigger families, you know what I'm talking about. It's always, you know, see, this is one thing that I've had a conversation with one of my friends about. It's like when like your family or groups of people, communities that you've grown up on, people within that watched you grow feel like they raised you and they feel like their opinions matter for you and they just want you to succeed because they raised you so much. They want the product of you to look good. It's like you don't want they feel like they're doing something but they're really not. The way we should end generational toxic traits in terms of weight and body image is to not treat the child as a product of you. You don't own them. They're not your what's a word? What's a good word to use? Property. They're not your property. Especially if you're not the parent of that child or person, you know, you have no business putting your 2 cents into their personal lives. So, from my experiences, let's say if someone could have told me anything about my health, the best way to approach it is not to say shit at all. And if you are a parent, I'm not a parent first of all, but I feel like if I was a parent and let's say my child or maybe someone like a niece and nephew or whatever, I wouldn't even tell them that their weight's the problem. There's a thing called being healthy. There's a difference between being healthy and being like happy. Does that make sense? Like being healthy also means to be happy. You need to be happy to be healthy. You can't just be sad and then your your diet's good and you're in a good low weight. Just because you're not like just because you're in a low weight or you're at your proper weight for your body mass index doesn't mean that you're 1,000% happy. Healthiness should also be mental health together. And maybe doing things like, yeah, health is important. We need to emphasize health is important, but health up here and health up in everywhere is important. Like if your child might have like a health issue going on because of the way they've been eating, how about instead of telling them that they need to stop eating, don't ever say that, and that they need to lose weight, figure out their mental health first and do things that they want to do and make them happy. Like have them go out for a walk, and y'all can talk about things like how's school going or how do they feel, therapy, maybe going grocery shopping together, actually having them get involved in cooking or like looking at ingredients and like instead of eating out a lot, because that's one thing I used to do a lot, maybe try making some of the same foods that they love at home because home cooking is way healthier than, eating outside. That these are things that I wish I had. I had those things, but I wish I had more of those things, or more support. Or I feel like children who have been criticized for their weight most of their lives would feel better or would benefit from that. There's more than just, it's more to weight than just, to be healthy. It's also mental health. I feel like mental health is the key to healthiness, and then everything else comes after. Because you could lift all the weights you can and weigh your, I guess, your perfect size, but your happiness should come first. Because if you're not happy, you're not really loving yourself, right? I hope I'm making sense, because I feel like that's what I learned. Because now I recently decided, this around this time, like a couple months ago, around when I graduated, to change my lifestyle. Because I don't want to get too personal, but I guess there was like health things that I needed to fix, and in order for me to do that, I had to change my eating habits a little bit. Let's just say, and now I feel a lot better, but like physically. But I feel like there's things I still need to work on mentally, like go to therapy, talk it out, journal, whatever I can. Because just because I realized, just because, even like I've even seen it somewhere. I need to find the photo. But this quote was awesome, or like this little image or graphic image. It was a girl who was like, in the mirror, and she hated herself because she was overweight or something like that. Like, and then there was another side by side photo. It was like a little character. It wasn't like a real girl, but and she was smaller. And she was like, "No, I'm still not happy." You know, it was like, with, even when she was bigger and then when she was smaller, she still felt the same. You know, and that's how I feel still. Like, just because you lose weight or gain weight or whatever, you still might feel the same. It's something to do with, maybe something you haven't touched on yet in therapy, or something you need to touch on in therapy, or write about, or like handle. It's more to that. I feel like that's what people don't realize. So when an older generation does these things, it's because they haven't touched what happened to them years ago, and they're pushing it on to the younger generation. We need to make mental health important. So every generational toxic trait has something to do with what hasn't been nipped in the bud back then, and it keeps continuing. But once the cycle could end, when one of us finally nips it in the bud, and just, you know make it better. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's where I'm getting at. But with this topic, I feel like that's basically it. um, but yeah, I think I'm gonna end this off right here. But but before y'all go, I want y'all to think about any toxic trait that you've picked up on, or like what you've seen within your family, and think about what would be the reason why this person has said these things to you, or does these things to this person, and maybe talk to that person, maybe if you have some type of relationship with them. Because the one thing that I've done when I was in college, which is really good to do, so let this be a family member that you're close with, but they might be a little older and that they're still cool. Like, one thing that I loved to do, even though I hated those projects, was to ask questions towards my older generation, and ask them the questions like, how did your mom treat you when you were younger, or what are things that were self-conscious about? Were there any issues that were never really handled back then, and were they handled? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but let me know about any other generational toxic traits that I should talk about, other than body weight and image, or let me know what you guys have gone through personally. So, yeah, I hope this episode was great for you guys. I hope the visual was A-okay. But yeah, I wanted to just redo this episode and just talk about this a little bit. But yeah, I will talk to y'all later. And I think I'm going to keep doing these visual topics, or not topics, visual podcast episodes. So yeah, so I'll just end it up here. I'm dead. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.